نسألك يا من هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم، ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. During this nights of the holy month of Ramadan, we have been looking at the brief Tafsir of Surah Rahman, Surah number 55 of the Quran, which the Prophet has described as Urusul Quran, the bride of the Quran, because of the uniqueness that it has, especially the theme of the Surah, which deals with the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why even the beginning of the surah is with the name of Allah, Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, Khalaq al-Insan, Allamahu al-Bayan. Ar-Rahman is the unique name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the meaning and the implications are universal. This is His name only. Nobody can be called Rahman, but the mercy that we refer to when we call Him Rahman covers the entire universe. And we saw that in the ayat that we have discussed till now, ayat 1 to 19, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala moves from the sama to the earth back and forth. You know, after talking about the divine guidance as well as the issue of creation of human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes to the heavens, comes back to the earth in describing the blessings. Just to summarize, we saw the issue of guidance and the creation of human beings, the issue of bayan, the intellectual ability that Allah has given to us. Then He talks about the sun and the moon, and then He comes back to the earth and He talks about the herbs and the trees, and then going back to the sky, He's talking about sama and the mizan He's established. Then He again refers to the earth, talks about fruits and dates and grains and vegetables, and then he's talking about the human beings and jinn. And last night we saw the ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Himself as Rabbul Mashriqain wa Rabbul Maghribain. That is where we ended, that He is the Lord of the two west and the two easts. And we see that, interchange between talking about what is in the heavens and then means what is there up there in the sky and then what is there on the earth. After talking about this phenomenon of sunrise and sunset, now the ayat that we look at tonight from ayat number 20 to 25, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again talks about a specific ni'mat that is given to us in form of the water on this earth. The ayat basically begins the words مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. The term bahr means sea. It's used mostly for ocean and seas. Bahrain, al-Bahrain. Let me test you. Yesterday we looked at Mashriqain and Maghribain. Remember, why do we have ya and noon at the end of Maghrib and Mashriq? It stands in a noun. It stands for dual. Mashriqain means to Mashriq. Maghribain means to Maghrib. So in the same line, when we say Bahrain, we are referring to two seas, two Bahr. Do you know why the country known as Bahrain is known as Bahrain? Any idea? How would you connect with this meaning? Two seas. Bahrain is an island. There is sea on one side, there is sea on the other side. So basically that's where the name Bahrain comes in. It's interesting, although not part of the Tafsir. Bahrain is, of course, a predominantly Shia part of the world. Unfortunately, we have a situation there. All of you are aware of it. It's one of those areas in the Middle East where Shiaism found its place from very early days. After Medina, during the days of the Prophet, the first namaz al-Jumu'ah established outside Medina was in Bahrain. So it has its own very special, significance in history, as well as its attachment to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. A scholar by the name of Syed Ni'matullah Jazairi, lived about 400 years ago, 500 years. He had this tendency of writing things in a more light manner, just to lighten up the spirit of the students of religion. In one of the books, he talks about a very interesting, it's kind of a joke, where he says that, talking about the Shi'i presence in Bahrain. He says one Bahraini died. When he was buried, Munkar and Nakir come and ask him the questions. Man Rabbuka, he responds to that. Man Nabiyuka, what is your deen, what is your kitab? When they asked him, who is your imam? His answer was, Ana Bahrainiyun. I'm a Bahraini. So you should know, you can assume if I'm a Bahraini, then I am a Shia. Salawat Panik Anyway, let's get back to our Bahrain here. مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. He merged. Interestingly, the word maraja in English and the merge in English and Arabic is almost same in the meaning. It doesn't mean really merging completely, but putting them side by side. مرج البحرين يلتقيان. He placed the two seas together. يلتقيان, in a sense that they meet one another. بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. But between them there was a barrier, barzakh, a barrier which they were not allowed to overstep. That's why, the time between death and the day of resurrection is known as barzakh. It is there in between the day of Qiyamah and the life in this dunya. What does this ayat refer to? And that's a major question that even Mufassirin have, that what is the meaning of these two seas that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about? One indication that we can get from this is from other ayat of Quran. And this is a method that we have learned from the Ahlul Bayt, that Al-Quran ba'duhu yufassir al-ba'd, that certain ayats of Quran become a tafsir for certain other ayat of the Quran. There are two other ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Bahrain, two seas, in similar ways, but there he gives more clear description, where he says, وَمَا يَسْتَوِي الْبَحْرَيْنِ هَذَا عَذْبٌ فُرَاتٌ صَائِغٌ شَرَابُهُ وَهَذَا مِلْحٌ عُجَاجٌ. That in one sea you have the water which is sweet and furat, pleasant for agreeable for drinking, and the other is milhun ujaj. It is salty and bitter. And when you look at that, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not necessarily talking about two specific areas of the world. It's talking about two bodies of water could be seen in different parts of the world: the sweet water and the salty water, referring to the rivers and the oceans. So in rivers you would have the water that we can drink, whereas in the oceans you have salty water which is not good for us in any way. So what does this ayat basically, going back to that, maraj al-bahrain yaltaqiyan, at least we know the description, that one is talking about the fresh water, the other bahar is about the salty water. What does it mean when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, I put them side by side? allowed them to meet one another but not cross over one another. There is a variety of opinions among the commentators of Quran on this issue. I'll just share with you two opinions on this issue. One is from a prominent Mufassir of this century, Allama Tabatabai, in his Al-Mizan. He talks about it and he says basically it doesn't refer to any specific area in this world. It is a general statement about the great rivers on one side, which has fresh water, and the great oceans on the other side, which has salty water. And he says this barzakh that Allah is talking about is basically the natural barrier in form of the land mass or the mountains which are there, separating one body of water from the other. Another tafsir that we have is from a more contemporary Mufassir who is still alive, Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi, whose famous tafsir is known as Tafsir Namuna. There he says that, by looking at the description of the ayat and the knowledge that we have of the world at the moment, this most probably refers to the points where the great rivers meet the vast oceans. The point of, the rivers finally coming to into the sea. That is the point. You will see that the fresh water is now coming into the ocean, and there, to a distance, not all the way, the two distinct bodies of water, fresh on one side, salty on the other side, they still are there, yaltaqiyan. They meet one another, but they still maintain their distinction for some distance before they finally merge and become one, depending on which water is more than the other. And so this itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically referring to the blessing that He has sent to us in form of water and in form of the oceans which are around us. And at the end of that, we come to this often repeated ayat in this surah, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of your Lord's bounties will you both deny? And our response to that question of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be, لَا بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ آلَائِكَ رَبِّي أُكَذِّبْ. That, O my Lord, I do not deny any of your blessings. This theme of water and sea and rivers do not end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues. In ayat number 22, He says, يَخْرُجُ مِنْهُمَا اللُّؤْلُ وَالْمَرْجَانِ. That this body of water that we have given to you in different parts of the world, many things you get from it. This is source of your food also, many kind of blessings, but it's also a source. And he singles out two examples here. Al-lu'lu wal-marjan, referring to the pearl and the coral which is there. Now these are the items which are basically used for cosmetics or for decoration, but as well as it's used for medicine, especially the atibba and the hukama of the old days used to use these items for curing some of the medical issues. Whether modern science does that or not, I'm not very sure about it. And again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes to that ayat again, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which of your Lord's bounties will you deny? The theme doesn't end with lu'lu and marjan. It goes on, again, referring to the sea and the water. وَلَهُ الْجَوَارِ الْمُنْشَآتِ فِي الْبَحْرِ كَالْأَعْلَامِ. And His are the manufactured ships on the sea that looks like landmark or like mountains. The word kal-a'lam. A'lam is plural of alam. Alam means something which is standing up and which is visible from far. And actually it was used for mountains. Later on, anything which becomes a sign for us to distinguish something from far away is known as alam. That's why even the alam that we have is known as alam in that sense. And so if you look at the, especially the days when they used to make the ship, that in the horizon, you will see the mast of the ship will be seen first. And so it becomes like a symbol or very similar to the top of the mountain. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using as an example, that His are the manufactured ships on the sea that look like landmarks. And that is also considered to be a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ships not only carry passengers. These days, you know, there are many other ways of doing that. But when it comes to goods, still, even in the modern time, a large quantity of goods are shipped from one part of the world to other by the sea. And that is where we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you look at this process, you will see I have given all these blessings to you, especially coming to the issue of the seawater and the way we use it. Let me go to a series of other ayat, but before that, a point of reflection here. The beginning here, wallahu. Lahu means belongs to him, or it's his. The ships basically is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says lahu. This is his. All the ships belong to him. But then when we look at the word munsha'at, munsha'at means something which has been manufactured or built. Who builds the ships? It's the human beings. In the beginning he says Allahu, the ships belong to him. But then he's putting another word there and saying munsha'at. What is he trying to say? He's basically saying that yes, you build it. But the resources that you used, the raw material that you use, I gave it to you. Even the intelligence that you have to exploit the nature and the resources of this earth, I gave it to you. You yourself belong to me. So everything belongs to me, but still I allow you to own this earth. And this brings us to this theme I've been repeating many times, that this dunya is for us, we are not for this dunya. Al-Ard has been made for us. We have been allowed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to own it and to use it for our good. The ayat of Quran on this issue are many. Let me just look at this statement. Sakhara lakum. Taskhir. To conquer something or to subdue something. And the word sakhara lakum basically means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made subservient for you or to you certain things. And in the context of the ayat that we discuss here about the sea and the things that we get from it and the ship, it's interesting. There are three ayat beginning with the same word, sakhara lakumul bahr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the sea subservient to you. You have to exploit it, whether it's through food or other items. Then you can get from it. Lu'lu al-marjan was mentioned there as an example. And so that's the source of livelihood of many, many people around the world. Number two, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الْفُلْكِ. Especially Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala singles out this vessel that we use to transport passengers and goods on the water. That the ability that we have to manufacture ships and then we use it. Not only that, we use the water as a means of, as a path for transferring our goods, but we also use the air. So even the air and the wind in a way is made musakhar for us. We use the powers and the tools in order to use it for our own good. And finally, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whatever is there in the earth, we have made it subservient to you. And so this dunya belongs to us. We don't belong to this dunya. The dunya is for us, for us to do the taskhir, to exploit it with the intelligence and the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. But that is where the amanat comes in. That is this concept of khilafatullah for a human being comes in. That we have this amanat and we have to use it according to the means allowed to us, so that we can leave it in a good condition for the next and the future generations. And that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again comes to this ayat which is repeated, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of your Lord's bounties will you both deny? And our response is, لَا بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ آلَائِكَ رَبِّي أُكَذِّبُ. Salawat alayhi. We had some quiz, but unfortunately we couldn't get it printed, so we'll use it tomorrow. But let me ask you one. I think I still have some time. How many of you remember the Arabic term in the hadith of the Prophet where he describes Surah Rahman? Just raise your hands, don't say it. Don't say it, just raise your hand. What about Inayat? Where is he? He's not there? Okay. Yeah. How many of you remember that? It was Urusul Quran, where the Prophet says, everything has وَلِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عُرُوسٌ وَعُرُوسُ الْقُرْآنِ سُورَةُ الرَّحْمَنِ. Everything has a bride, and the bride of the Quran is Surah Rahman. Another hadith that we discussed in the context of the name Ar-Rahman was dividing the concept of Rahman and Rahim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wa salam, to explain the difference between the rahmat of Rahmaniyat and the rahmat from Rahimiyat, he explained it slightly differently. If you remember that Allah is Rahman, Rahmanul Dunya wa Rahimul Akhirah. Remember that. Rahmanul Dunya wa Rahimul Akhirah. His rahmat for dunya is universal, covers everywhere. Even those who don't know him, even those who deny him and oppose him, it still covers him. But Rahimul Akhirah, this is his rahmah, which is specifically for the believers in the Akhirah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا رب.
اللطيف الخبير الحليم العظيم الغفور الشكور العلي الكبير الحفيظ المقيت الحسيب الجليل الكريم الرقيب المجيب الواسع الحكيم الودود المجيد الباعث الشهيد